The government last night notified new Provident Fund rules. Actually, this is an announcement that was made in the budget, but the notification has just come now as part of a higher tax plan when it comes to your Provident Fund. Now, what is it exactly? It says that the tax-free interest has been capped only to Provident Fund contribution up to 2.5 lakh rupees in a year. Anything above that as your PF contribution means that the interest on it will be taxed by the government. This also means that the PF accounts that we have will be split into two. One will have the amount of money which is not taxable and won't be taxed. The other will be the taxable account. Just to clarify, the money that you have so far in your PF account will not get taxed. It's only subsequently the contributions that are made. We try to simplify it and I hope we've gotten it right. But for example, if your PF contribution in a year is 3 lakh rupees, then the interest that will be taxed will be on the income of 50,000, on the PF contribution of 50,000. On that, the interest that comes out is 4,250. And if you consider the 30% slab, then the tax on it will be 1,325 rupees. This is just one example. We'll give you more as we go along to simplify it for you. Let me say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Dipesh Chheda, Principal for Withdrawal Advisors, and Tapti Ghosh, partner with Deloitte India, joining us this evening as well. Thank you so much to both of you. Tapti, let's start off with you. Now, what percentage of people will get impacted? Because the minute you say, oh, your PF contribution, the interest on that will be taxed. Is it for everybody? Is it only for a specific segment of people? How will it work?
So, first of all, the positive part of it is it's not going to be impacting those at the lower levels of income. It's going to impact only those that possibly are at the middle level and, of course, for the high income group. So, on an estimated basis, if, say, the PF wages, as we call it, is about 21 lakhs in the year, the contribution to Provident Fund, say around 12% would be about 2 lakh 50. And it's only those who are contributing more than that will be taxed. So it does not impact those who would get PF wages less than, say, about 21 lakh.
Okay, so that is one important thing that I wanted to actually highlight. The second is how will it work, Dipesh? 2 accounts will be created. Is the first account only for the contribution made so far, or anything less than 2.5 lakh each year will also keep going into that account? And if my employer isn't contributing the same amount, does that make a difference to my cap?
Okay. Hi, Tanvi. Good evening. Let me just give you a little background about Provident Fund, and then we'll go to what are the amendments which were introduced by Finance Act 2021 and what are these rules. So that will help us understand this whole gamut easily. So there are mainly there are 3 Provident Funds. One is statutory Provident Fund, wherein government employees contribute, employees from universities and schools contribute. And this contribution is mainly made by only employees. There is no employer contribution at all in statutory Provident Fund. Next is recognized Provident Fund. This is where private sector comes in and private sector employees contribute and same amount is contributed by employer also. And that fund is either managed by the company or it is given to government for managing it. There is third type of Provident Fund, which is public Provident Fund, which is wherein self-employed people contribute money to public Provident Fund. So now let me give you an example. If say there is a private sector employee who is contributing 5 lakh rupees to recognized Provident Fund, an equal amount is contributed by employer. Then on that 5 lakh rupees, which is contributed by employee, on that employee earns 8.5% interest, which turns out to be 42,500. Till 31st March 21, entire interest was exempt, was not taxable. Now, by Finance Act 2021, amendment was introduced, which states that if any interest which is earned on contribution over and about 2.5 lakh rupees, that would be taxable and that will not be exempt. So in our example, any contribution over and about 2.5 lakh rupees will be taxable, and that turns out to be 21,250, which will be taxable. And similarly, limit has been prescribed for government sector employees, wherein higher limit has been given for them. And if they contribute till 5 lakh rupees, there will be no taxability of interest. Over and above 5 lakh rupees, whatever is interest proportionate to contribution above 5 lakh rupees would be taxable. So now rules which have been introduced in relation to this amendment state that how that interest will be computed and how separate fund would be maintained by a provident fund. So this is whole discussion about the amendment and the rules. And
if I had to ask you, Dipesh, for simpler understanding, and I don't know if that's how this works, but what is the interest that will be charged? What percentage interest will be charged on this?
So any contribution which a private sector employee makes over and about 2.5 lakh rupees, on that, whatever is interest earned, that would be taxable, and that would be taxable in the hands of employee at tax bracket in which that employee falls.
At the tax bracket in which the employee falls.
Yeah. So for example, if employee is earning income over and about 10 lakh rupees, then basic tax rate for that employee would be 30%, and applicable surcharge and education cess would be liable on that basic rate.
Okay. The one big reaction that I have seen since this came out, and of course, many people are still trying to understand how it impacts them individually. But Tapti goes, it's been about why another tax? Why are we now being, made to pay another tax? Now, these are the savings for a lot of people. This is a way of saving money for a future. In that, if you tell me that you are also going to start taxing that now, is that fair?
And I get that perspective as well. There can be two views to every question, of course. An answer can be found from the explanatory memorandum that was there, that came in along with the budget, where they spoke about the fact that there were employees that were contributing huge amounts of funds, and the entire interest accrued on these funds were being exempt from tax without any threshold benefits. And hence, there was a need to bring in a threshold above which the interest would become taxable. One saving grace is that it does not have any retrospective effect. So it's only for contributions made in financial year 21-22 and beyond, interest on which will be brought to tax. So, yes, so for the past, there won't be an impact, but in the current year and the future, there will definitely be an impact.
Is there a way to minimize the impact here, Dipesh? Because the money keeps on adding year after year after year, and will obviously then keep on seeing more interest getting generated from there. So then people are, and we've got calls in the evening which said that, should I just keep withdrawing my PF money then?
Yeah, Tanvi, I don't think there is any option to minimize tax incidence on this. And withdrawal also is allowed under certain circumstances. Yeah. You cannot withdraw as such. Only there are specified circumstances you can withdraw, or at time of retirement you can withdraw, which is at age of 55 and above. So not many options to save tax on higher PF contributions.
Okay, so we are basically looking at a situation where ideally the intent here, Dipesh, is to not allow people to park too much of their income into the provident fund. And that, as was being pointed out, that there seems to be a trend where people are putting in more and more money into PF, and maybe to avoid getting taxed on it, and hence this. But is there no cap, and could that not have been a better way of it, out of this?
So this is what government is saying here is that if you want 8.5% interest, which generally is not available, if you want that interest, then you will have to pay tax. We are not restricting your contribution. You can contribute whatever amount you want to PF. But if you contribute more than 2.5 lakh rupees for private sector employees and for government more than 5 lakh rupees, then whatever interest you earn on that excess contribution will tax it. So government is saying that you are free to contribute whatever you want, but at above certain limit will tax it. I think from government perspective, this seems to be correct. And government was also worried that a lot of people are parking their money in provident fund, and that is used as one source of investment. So that is the reason why this amendment was introduced.
Yeah, I think that many people did see it as a tool of saving and investment, and are going to be extremely disheartened about the fact that the government has found another way to tax it, even if it is just saying taxing the interest that you earn on that money. But thank you, both of you, for joining us and taking all of our queries, and I hope that's helped our viewers also understand some of the basics Q&A. What has changed? Where earlier your PF interest on your PF was not being taxed. Now, if your PF contribution is over 2.5 lakh rupees each year, then the interest which is generated on that will be taxed by the government, and they're going to take that money away from you. That's the plain and basic simple thing. If your question is what if your contribution is less than 2.5 lakh rupees, well, good for you. You're all in the clear. There is not going to be any tax that comes in. The interest there remains tax-free, as was right now for all categories. Many are also asking us, what really happens cumulatively, and which is the question that I was asking there to our panelists as well. Will it apply to interest earned so far? No, everything that's been announced is applicable April 1st, 2021. This is an announcement which was made in the budget and starts from this financial year itself, not from what you may have contributed and put together before March 31st, 2021. How will the taxable interest be calculated? Well, two PF accounts, one for the money you've gathered so far and put together so far, which will also be where the non-taxable contribution goes even from here on, which is money less than 2.5 lakh rupees. But anything more than 2.5 lakh rupees, the excess contribution, as it is being called, will go in the taxable account, and then the interest which is generated on that amount will get taxed, probably deducted at the TDS level itself. Hope that those answers resolve your queries. Thank you so much for joining us.